everyone, welcome to the Teach Yourself podcast. Nathan here from the office, trying a little bit different camera setup and all, and hopefully it goes well. But recently I've gotten back into running consistently at least. And so I wanted to take an episode and go through some different things that running has taught me, and hopefully they can, be of some use to you. And this isn't necessarily just things that it's taught me about running, but things that running has taught me about life. And I hope that they are of a little value to you guys that are listening. So first things first, one of the things that probably took me the longest to learn, especially when I was, in a running career, you could say, when I was in high school. And to just kind of start off with the story of how I got into running. In 7th grade, junior high, the first year you could kind of do like multiple sports in a year and play like on the actual school team. And so I decided to go out for cross country, which I had never done before. And I come from a family who historically has only played football. And so I wouldn't say it was frowned upon, but it wasn't the normal thing to do. It wasn't something anyone else had really done, at least amongst the men in my family. And so there was almost an apprehension about it. My mom was super supportive about it. My dad didn't play a whole lot of sports, so he didn't super care as long as I was really doing something to build character amongst, my brothers, my uncles, my grandparents. It was something different. And so it was a learning curve for everybody to be able to support me in that. And so as I went through junior high, I wasn't very good. I dramatically improved from how I started, but I wasn't a standout runner. I could run and I could move quickly, but I was not winning any races or even close to winning any races. And as I got through high school, that kind of stayed the case. In fact, as I got into my freshman year of high school, a whole influx of people joined the team, people that hadn't been on the team before that. And I expected that because I had been on the team for the 2 years previous to this, that I would at least be a little bit better than them. And that was absolutely not the case. In fact, they were all substantially better than me. And I didn't even make the varsity team. I was somewhere in the middle of the JV team. And so I was feeling pretty down about that. And comparing myself to them, I was like, what's all this work I put in? What's that even worth if it's not even getting me where I want it to be? And so that was a mixture of, wanting the wrong things and not putting in, the level of work that went with them, or believing that even if I did put in the level of work, it wouldn't be enough to get me past these other people. And that kind of held me back for a long time, till about end of my junior year and really the start of my senior year, when I realized that the only person I needed to be was myself yesterday. And I think I've talked about this before, but it's just really been reiterated to me again as I've started back up running. Been going consistently for the past 2 weeks, week and a half, somewhere in there. And I am way slower than I used to be. I'm in Idaho, so the elevation's a lot higher. So there's a lot of different impacts, but I'm still, minutes slower than what I could run in high school. Granted, I haven't run consistently in almost 4 years. And so the first couple of days, I just felt bad about myself. And I was like, wow, you have, fallen to pieces and you need to put yourself back together. You're doing terrible. And I was kind of my own hater. And then I remembered this, that the only person I needed to be better than was myself yesterday. And as I reflected on the last couple of days of running, I realized that has been the case. And one of the things that's really been able to help me realize this is that I've been training with my wife. We're training to run a 10K in the beginning of June. My wife's never been a runner, though she has been a star athlete, but she's never done any long distance training. And so this has been a new thing for her, and it's been hard for her to run with me because even though I'm slow, I tend to run a distance ahead of her or be faster than her, and so that's kind of upsetting. And so I've had to help her reframe her thinking and just say, hey, you're just trying to improve from how you did yesterday. You're just trying to get a little bit better. And then I remember it's like, well, you can't say that to her and then not live that principle yourself. And it reminds me a lot of the book by James Clear, Atomic Habits, and he talks about 1% better every day. And it's that exact same thing. As long as there is improvement, that's all that truly matters. So that's the first thing that I've learned from running that I think is one of the most vital, most important things that anybody can learn and you can really apply, and it's super important to understand about life. Number 2 is this. Running has taught me that anyone can do anything. In the running world, you see people from so many different backgrounds. Physically, they're so very different. And, there's fast people, slow people, people in the middle. There's people that start slow and fast, people that start fast and slow. And I'm talking like careers, not necessarily in races, though there is that too. And it just shows me that it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what your background is, who your family is, what you've done before. It just matters that you show up and then you try and you keep going. And you try and get a little bit better, just like I was saying before. And I think the same is true in anything that we try in life. You want to be a successful business person. Anybody can do that. You just have to show up and give the consistent effort. You want to do literally anything, whether that's in sports, in the arts, in a career, in your family life, in religion. If you want to grow in anything, you just need to show up. You need to put in constant effort and you'll start to learn. No one's saying you're going to be good at it to start. You might be better than some people at the start, but you might not. But if you put in the time, you will get better at it. Hours count. I know there's a thing that goes around and says, if you can put in 20 hours, you can learn just about any skill, at least the basics of it, and then you just continually grow from there. And I think that's true as much in running as literally any other aspect of life. Third, and this one's super impactful, and the first time I'd really heard it worded this way, I was watching, I think it was an ESPN 30 for 30 on James Lawrence is his name. And he also goes by the Iron Cowboy. And so James Lawrence is the greatest endurance athlete to ever, grace this planet, at least up till now. But he's also a person that had never run more than a 5K before he was 30. And so now he's the greatest endurance athlete that's ever lived because he's done a couple of things where it's been quite a few years now, but he once did 50 Ironmans in 50 states in 50 days. And if anybody doesn't know, just for reference, an Ironman is where you swim 2 miles, you bike something like 120, and then you run a marathon. And you have to do it in under 8 hours. So he did that 50 times in a row. That in and of itself would be awesome, but he did it, the 50 times in a row in 50 different states, traveling around the entire country. That's including Hawaii and Alaska. Then a couple years later, probably 5 or 6 years later, he ups the ante and he does 100 Ironmans in 100 days. This time he stayed in his home state of Utah and kind of varied the course a little bit, but he still did it 100 in a row. And on his last one, I believe, or at least one of his events, there was a race to correlate with his last marathon as he finished out his last Ironman. And his mom ran it with him. It was like I think there was varying levels of racing from marathon, half marathon, probably 10K and a 5K, which is typical. And his mom had been training for a few months to prepare for it, to run the 5K. And she was the last person to finish. And here he is, he's the person that's doing 100 Ironmans in 100 days. And in this ESPN 30 for 30, he goes and he says, that was her hard. This is my hard. And it doesn't make her hard any less valuable or impactful because it's hers. And so my hard isn't your hard, and your hard isn't my hard, but it is hard. And so we grow from our own experiences and we support others in theirs. And maybe we learn a thing or two along the way. But just because something is hard for me doesn't mean it's hard for you. Maybe it's even harder for you, and vice versa. And so we just need to give people that grace and that love whenever we are going through difficult things, and then they are as well. Number 4, and I think this is something I'm still learning, is that life is not meant to be painful, but it is meant to be hard. So kind of playing off that last one. And I say this because in running is hard, no matter the degree. As good as you get, it's still hard because you're pushing yourself to new limits every day. And so it's always difficult. But running is never meant to be painful. As soon as it's painful, you know something's wrong, you're probably injured. And that's not the purpose of running. It's not the purpose of life to get injured and hurt in whatever you're doing. That means you need to take some time to recover, to recuperate, and come back and be stronger again. And for me, that's been a hard one to internalize recently, and to be able to step back when something is painful, in figuratively speaking, metaphorically speaking, I'm hurt, to step back, relax, and rest so I can recover and learn from, whatever mistake may have injured me so I don't repeat it. Same thing in running. Maybe that's, you're not wearing the right shoes. Maybe you need to fix your form. Maybe you're pushing yourself too hard too often. There's a lot of different factors that can play into it. But the important thing is that you understand that while it is supposed to be hard, pain does not equate to the level of difficulty. it should never be painful. Granted, there are things like soreness because it is difficult, that's growth, and that's a different kind of pain than, a broken bone versus a sore muscle. Same thing in life. It might be hard and we might feel that pushback, but it doesn't mean we're broken down, because that's a totally different thing. And when we are broken down, that's when we need to take time to do some other things so that we can come back and do what we're supposed to. So just internalize that one again. Life isn't meant to be painful, but it is meant to be hard, and sometimes we do get sore. And so the last one I wanted to share is that we have to push past our limitations in order to reach new heights. You can run and run and run and run, and sometimes you never see an improvement. You're on the same pace for the same miles, and you never get any better, you never get any faster. It's one way to look at it. Or you can never run any further. It's always hard. And it's the same way in life. We do the same things over and over and over again, and we wonder why we're not growing and improving and doing better. And so that just comes from we're not pushing past our limitations. We're not stepping outside of our comfort zone. In a religious sense, I've heard, everything outside the comfort zone is called the faith zone or the growth zone, where you have to do something that's unknown in order to get, a new result. And so when we push past our limitations, that's when we really start to grow. For me, I'm training for a 10K. I've never actually run more than probably 5 miles. You might think, how is that possible if you ran cross country? We never trained that far. We had a really big cross country team, so it was pretty difficult for my relatively old coach to keep track of that many kids for that many miles in a day. So it was a lot easier to stick it, kind of max 4 miles is what we would train normally. And then if you wanted to train further than that, you kind of did it on your own time. So I never really did. So this race that I'm training for right now is pretty daunting. I've never run that far. I don't know how to train for it. Fortunately, I found a couple resources that are helping me. But it's forcing me to push past my limitations. In the past 4 years, really the past 2 that I've really had time to think about running and training in a way that is race worthy, I haven't started running because I didn't want to push myself past my limitations. I knew it was going to be hard because I was so out of shape, because I hadn't really been doing any athletic activities for so long. And I was scared of not being able to cross those limits. But I never would know if I could if I never tried. So if you want to reach new heights, you got to push past your limitations. And maybe as you start to push past those, you'll realize those heights are a little too high and you need to set them back a little bit to start. But that doesn't mean you can't get there eventually. And it just takes that constant effort, getting a little bit better each and every day. And so that's the other thing I love about running, just kind of to cap this off. It all compounds, it all adds together. All these principles lived at once are really what get things moving, really what create personal growth and improvement, whether that's in running or in life. But just thought I'd share that with you guys. Hopefully you learned something, and thanks for listening.